I want to start this video out with this petrified tree stump in Yosemite National Park in Wyoming. It is a confirmed tree stump turned to stone. Now here's another example of a tree stump turned to stone. We can see the fibers as they grew and even the rings if you look at it from up top. Now I want to look at a regular old tree stump that has been unpetrified. You can see the roots coming out of the ground, and if it was petrified, this would still look like a cut tree stump because it was cut before it was petrified. Now in the Petrified National Forest in Arizona, we see tree stumps that have been scattered around, or they could be whole trees that have fell, and the explanation is that earthquakes shook them apart. They really do look cut, but in any case, let's just assume earthquakes did shake them apart. There they are, petrified in the middle of the desert where no vegetation, very little vegetation grows now. So now let's look at our tree stump just to wrap our minds around an actual tree stump. And we've seen the other petrified tree stumps. Now let's look at a grander scale. Now if this was small, like the one we looked at earlier in Yosemite National Park, we'd have no doubt that it was a petrified tree stump, but since it's so large and massive, it is hard to wrap our heads around such a thing. The explanation we are given is that this was formed by lava, and lava pushed up and then cooled and hardened. Really amazing for lava, for just bubbling, unintelligent, molten rock material to form such a beautiful pattern, especially when we look at the top and we look at the sides very carefully. It's as if it's a tree. If we look at the bark of a tree, we see exactly the same kind of pattern. As it grows, it pushes the older bark out, pieces fall from the bottom. But we really have to examine this closely. And what we find is these columns, or really fibers, are hexagram-shaped fibers. They're not, again, just some stupid lava, which, even if lava could somehow form in this way, it wouldn't have a mathematical equation of a pattern like the hexagram, a perfect form that we find with plant fibers and, of course, bees, and a perfect form. And again, we're not looking at this from the top, but let's jump over to Ireland in a place called Giant's Causeway. And now we can see the same thing that we find on the top of Devil's Tower in Wyoming, but we find these scattered all over the shoreline. Now these are the hexagram fibers that I'm talking about that have petrified the same way that the trees in Petrified National Forest petrified, but this is definitely, or was once, organic material. Otherwise a rock wouldn't form in these hexagram patterns that we find in living things in nature. Now it is true we do find crystals that will often form geometric patterns, but this is too perfect. Each one is a perfect hexagram. And so this appears to be either an ancient tree, or it could have been something else. It could have been a bush, a giant bush. What do we know? But nevertheless, a natural, petrified, massive something that's left over. And here's a view from way, 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 way above, and now you can almost imagine the giant tree there. And what we were looking at down there was, you know, just little shoots growing off of the roots, or something of that nature. Here's a place called Devil's Postpile in California, and we see the same perfect hexagram columns found. And I'm sure you've seen these basalt columns used as water features. Sometimes they'll drill a hole in them and make water fountains as ornamental backyard decor. And seldom do people realize where they originate and how they originally look. I had never seen what they really look like. And oftentimes, you know, there's no designated protection. This is just considered a natural geological phenomenon. And here I like this image because it shows what a tree actually looks like, a tree stump, right in the foreground here. It gives a nice perspective, especially with the little sway that we have, exactly what the tree was doing and what trees do. It doesn't seem to grow like the pine would, so it leads me to believe that it's a different kind of tree than a pine. And here we can see the basalt columns scattered around. These are kind of the pieces that people would probably harvest for those fountain features. And the next place we're going to look at is called Hell's Gate in Idaho, and we really get a good impression of the root system here, the way that it would grow up, the way that a tree would, the way that it would flare. I believe that's what they would call it, flare. The trunk typically does that, giving it a nice solid foundation. And here are just some other basalt columns scattered around. Again, if this was lava, lava was, you know, really intelligent all over the world. You know, just magically cools with these flat bottoms. And this is just a gorgeous piece. And you know, most of it has been washed away. Why this was revealed? Usually, not usually, but in this case, we see them by the water, and maybe the water washed away the rocky top, exposing this. Otherwise, you know, these could be scattered, and I believe they are, all over the earth, and very well could be the mountain chunks that we see, and we're just simply seeing chunks, but they're covered in debris, and we're not able to recognize the tree. But here, by the shorelines, it's a little easier to imagine. So yeah, you make up your mind. I can't say that I know. I don't know. That's all I can say, but it sure seems like more, and mountains sure seem like more, after a quick study of these basalt columns. And it really is a great mystery. And this last image is of Big Bend, Texas, and I really think this one is tree stumpy.